Guillaume Lesuel here, host of the E-commerce Wizards podcast, where I feature leaders in e-commerce and business. Today's guest is Michael Erickson Facchin, CEO of Ad Badger. So he's an expert in Amazon pay-per-click advertising, and he's the creator of a software company, Ad Badger, which manages all that pay-per-click Amazon stuff for you. So today's topic will be how to start a software company and market your new software to success. So before we get started, we have a sponsorship message. This episode is brought to you by MageMontreal. If a business wants a powerful e-commerce online store that will increase their sales, or to move piled up dormant inventory to free up cash reserves, or to automate business processes to gain efficiency and reduce human processing errors, our company, MageMontreal, can do that. We've been helping e-commerce stores for over a decade. Here's the catch. We're specialized and only work on the Adobe Magento e-commerce platform. We do everything Magento. If you know someone who needs design, development, training, support, we got their back. Email our support team, support@magemontreal.com, or go to magemontreal.com. That's MAGE Montreal.com. All right, Michael, pleasure having you here today.
Yes, I'm very excited. This is a really cool topic that I can talk a lot about.
Yeah, for sure. And this is your personal story as an entrepreneur, what you've lived. So I'm always interested to hear somebody's entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. I'd like to believe there's some lessons learned along the way.
I'm sure there is. There are many, no doubt there. So, can you tell me just a little bit about the background, how all this started, this company software project?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I was a freelancer and I was doing everything for anyone. So I was like building WordPress websites, I was doing SEO, I was doing local SEO and, global SEO. But pay per click was something that really resonated with me. And I think it's because I really have I grew up playing like real time strategy games like StarCraft, where it's like you versus the competition. Like, how are you going to set things up and how are you going to use different mechanisms that you have available in a way that's smarter and more efficient than your competition. So to me, that's how I describe pay per click. So it was a really cool way of like doing optimizations and seeing results in a relatively quick time cycle. And it was really enjoyable. So I decided to double down on pay per click for e-commerce and started my first company, which was searchscientists.com. And it's still around today. And that was a Google Ads, Facebook ads, and Amazon ads service company. So we were doing things manually for our e-commerce clients. And then in about 2016, 2017, I was sort of like, hey, like I really see pay-per-click advertising as becoming more efficient over time. I see software getting better over time. And I saw really advanced tools for Google Ads and Facebook ads, but I really didn't see what I thought was like the practitioner's tool, the tool that was really made for day-to-day optimization, technical optimization on Amazon advertising. So that's when I started Ad Badger, which is a software company that helps people get more done, get better results in less time on their on their Amazon ads. And that is the high level overview of where we're at. I've been full time at Ad Badger now since 2017, and it's been really really exciting.
It's fun journey, and I've never found PPC management to be as fun as StarCraft,
Hmm.
but I'm a big fan of that game as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, well, I have to ask: are you Protoss, Terran, or Zerg?
I'm a Protoss.
Oh yes, of course, me too, no doubt.
Of course, of course. I played them all, but for competition, it was once upon a time.
Nice.
Okay, now uh, let's say the startup phase for any software company like this is very challenging because you don't have revenue yet from that new venture, and you need to build a product that is good enough that people will be willing to pay for. Of course, most people in the marketplace now are aware of books like the Lean Startup,
Mhm.
which is great, helps people, but knowing the theory and putting an application is quite different. So, how did you say fund that new software? Was that through your previous company? Did you raise some money? How did you go about it?
Yeah, I consider myself a strong bootstrapper. And on the outset of thinking about starting a software company, I really was hesitant to raise any money. I was like, we don't need it. I will fund it with the profit from the first company, Search Scientist. And, you know, we did that at first. And it's a little bit of a dangerous game when you do that because I sort of did it open ended where it was like, oh, I'll just fuel the software company uh, without an end date in mind from the first company. And I sort of saw we did that for a couple months. We did it for a few more months, and then I sort of saw the inevitability of, hey, you could fund the software with some other revenue source for an indefinite amount of time. So I really wanted the software to be able to stand up on its own feet, and also software development is very expensive. So we did end up taking Ad Badger through a startup accelerator where we got introduced to a lot of investors. We get some seed money from that as well. So it was a little bit of a combination, a little bit of a hybrid approach, and that was important to me too, because you hear stories sometimes of founders raising too much money and then giving too much power too early, too soon to people who are not the founder. And, while that could be really good because you can really get plugged into people who have a lot more experience than you in certain things and people who have a lot of guidance and will be able to provide a lot of support. You just sometimes hear these horror stories. And, after raising money, I actually think some of the horror stories where, the founder loses control over the company, I think it's rarer than is perceived to be for a lot of people that are hesitant to raising money. I don't think it's as common as I think most investors like do generally want to help and do lend, their experience to you. So yeah, so that's a long way of saying like we sort of view ourselves as a hybrid where we try to be lean and bootstrapped, but at the same time we did raise some money in the beginning.
And when you say a seed round, what's that? A few 100,000, a million, two?
That's right. So we raised less than 500,000, which in the world of like Crunchbase, TechCrunch is a very insignificant amount.
Right, but it is still the correct amount for, let's say, a seed or pre-seed kind of
Right.
level. And like
Hmm.
you're saying, for how much control you give away, uh, we hear sometimes rules of like 20% at each time, and if you get to fifth round, then you sort of have almost nothing left.
Right.
And you try to avoid those horror stories like the Netscape guy that loses all control. But there are other ways, like it's well known now. Let's say the Google board and the founders Google, they can fire the board if they want to. So there's always a way if you are able to have enough strength and negotiation leverage to protect yourself as the owner. And let's say you just raise money for like 20%, but you don't lose control, and then you raise another 20%, but from other investors, not the
Hmm.
same one. So then it diversify also the voting power, and you put some clause to stay in power, and then you could raise another 20, then you just have 40 left. But by the time you're at the round C, I mean, depending how great the whole thing is, you could be a unicorn. You know?
Yeah, that's right. One concern I had was, and I'm sure you might feel the same concern. Imagine if you were to raise money, and then all of a sudden you start getting little nudges. Hey, what if you worked on Shopify as well? What if you worked on WooCommerce as well? That's additional revenue there. And I haven't talked to you about your personal preference about Magento or not. But for me, like I really wanted to go deep into Amazon advertising with this company, and I really wanted it to be like a lighthouse for Amazon marketers, you know, struggling with Amazon advertising. So I really wanted to like go deep into just one platform
Great.
and being able to, be upfront about that and be able to say like, hey, like I don't want us to incorporate, you know, five other platforms into our software because I really want to
It
be.
would be a startup mistake anyway, because then you have to interface to integrate with the API, the application programming interface of each of those software. And it's five times more work, and you dilute your work effort. But with a startup, you need to get the profit as soon as you can, or just viability break even as soon as you can.
Right.
Uh, and if you take on a project that's too ambitious, it's not going to work for a startup for
Mhm.
a software.
Yeah, we had my wife and I had one dog for a very long time, and we got a second dog, and it wasn't. double the amount of work. It was probably like 3.5x the amount of work because they would like they would create problems with each other, emergent. It was 1 + 1 = 3. So I have to imagine like the more things any piece of software does, it doesn't get a little bit more challenging. It gets logarithmically more challenging.
Yes, totally. Um, yeah, we've lived some of that experience building our own in-house ERP, and it stayed an in-house ERP instead of going to market because it's
Right.
just too broad of an approach. We would need to raise VC to put that on the market.
Right.
Um, okay, so it was a mix of personal funding. You had the chance of having another company funding it. You had some VC investment. Okay, and did you do further rounds of fundraising after, or was the software already self-sufficient?
It is, I'm proud to say, self-sufficient, which was,
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. It was something that it was really important to me to be able to get it to stand on its own 2 feet. And this is, a little insight into uh, just, speaking of hearing stories out there, you hear stories about people raising a lot of money, increasing their burn rate a lot, because you run at a negative for a very long time every single month. Um, in this for the sake of growth and development. So you'll do that for a very long time. And then what can happen? You need to raise money again because you're going to run out of money. So I didn't want to be on that loop. I didn't necessarily think it's not that there's anything wrong with that loop. I think it can work for a lot of different
I think there's a
companies.
lot of things wrong with that loop, but it can work in a
Mhm.
spectacular way if you make it work.
Yeah, I know people with really like a B2C product where they can acquire 5,000, 10,000 people a month using a B2C, mobile app. So in situations like that, it makes sense for them to, raise a lot, go super fast, raise again. It wouldn't make sense for them to say like, oh, we should only take in 1,000, B2C customers this month. Whereas in our case, which is sort of a niche B2B, we're charging, a few $100 a month. I do think there's a strong argument for, going slow, being sure you have strong retention, being sure you have, really good product market fit, and going through a natural cycle of, crawling, walking, running, flying, turning into a robot and soaring into outer space. Things. So I think it's okay to follow that progression for certain kinds of companies, and I thought we were one of them.
Okay, great. And let's talk about really that startup phase because it's so critical. It's where most of those software projects will die. Like,
Mhm.
how did you get your first customers?
Through sheer force, pushing a boulder up a mountain. Um, it was. Uh, it definitely, I jokingly say like pushing a boulder up a mountain, but it really can seem like that in the early stages, where a lot of times with software in the early days, it really does feel like you have to beg and apologize 24/7, because there are, especially with Amazon advertising, Amazon, if anyone's used Amazon advertising or the Amazon interface, you'll know that it's strangely buggy, even without plugging into their API. So there's some very strange things that it does. Um, and we've learned a lot of lessons about how to work with Amazon's APIs. And we didn't know those when we first started. So in the early days, it really does help if you build something more than just software in the beginning. And what I mean by that is if you can build a community around what it is that you're doing, if you could build goodwill in the industry, those things really matter a lot. Because I think any new software will probably have their, inevitable share of bugs. And if you're able to, just remind people that you're human, remind people that you're here to work for them, remind people that like you're your own toughest critic when it comes to the tool. Um, I think that goes a long way. So some of the things that we did in the early days was we really believed in content marketing, and we still do to this day. So being able to, talk to people and provide value even outside of the tool has been one of the things that I'm most proud of that we've done here at Ad Badger. We have, as far as I can tell, the most popular Amazon advertising dedicated podcast. And we were the first podcast to launch that was just focused on Amazon advertising. And I think that has been really helpful for us. So many messages about people, oh, I'm learning Amazon advertising through your podcast. Uh, y- you know, it completely warms my heart. So being able to create a company that will reach more people than will ever sign up for your software, I think is challenging. Great for branding, of course, and great for influence and name recognition in the community. And that is the way that we grew initially through content marketing and creating a community. Badger
Okay.
Nation is what we call it, is what we call our
Badger Nation,
listeners.
that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
was it like Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, other platforms, Slack private channels, or
I thought a lot about like what is the most optimal channel. So we've tried Facebook a lot. We tried a private community. We tried a Slack group at one point. We do have it on our list to try a LinkedIn group. And I think the ultimate answer is like we need a community manager to manage these, because what will inevitably happen is in the early days of our Facebook group, we would ask like, hey, what platform should we grow our community on? And we'd have a little survey. Should it be Facebook or LinkedIn or Slack or private URL? And like when you ask it on Facebook, everyone says Facebook. When you ask on LinkedIn, everyone says LinkedIn. When you ask on a private membership site, everyone says private membership site. So, for whatever reason, it's just the way that the internet works. Whatever platform people naturally prefer is what they want your platform to be on. So I still haven't solved that. If someone can create some kind of tool that like combines all of these, so like people can be in a LinkedIn group and in a Facebook group, but somehow there's like cross pollinated each other, like that is a phenomenal idea. That way you can sort of have your communities where they naturally fit, but they're all communicating with each other. That would be insane. That would be extra special.
okay, so wherever, as long as there's traction with the market, that there's you know clearly something happening there, but people care about that topic as well, and you can create a
Yeah.
community around that. And
Yeah.
then that's a great way of getting your first few customers to
Mhm.
engage, give you feedback, to be tolerant of the bugs of the new software, and
Yeah.
try to grow something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think that ever goes away. Like, that if you stay in sort of startup mode and you just stay a constant student, I think that's a good way to sort of approach software, because we're always releasing new things. Amazon advertising doesn't stand still, and our software, we're releasing something new like every month.
And still, if we're talking like startup tactics like that for software, did you give like discounts or a temporary, say, oh, it's a half price for 3 months, and then it's going to be full price because we're in startup mode or whatever?
Yes, definitely. We did a lot of launch pricing for a very long time, where we basically told people like, "Hey, while we're in beta, our eventual price will be, I don't know, something like $100 a month. But if you sign up while we're in beta, it'll be $50 a month." And I'm a big fan of grandfathering people in. If someone takes a bet on you early, reward them with that price, and it increase it for future customers. Uh, but like let those early customers, feel like they've made it and they're in the club. Uh, so we did that in the early days for sure.
Another challenge, other than obviously acquiring your first new customers, which is one of the biggest challenge, another very big challenge is the infrastructure on which this is built, and the ability to roll continuous updates. So how did you manage this? Because this is another pitfall that, let's say, if you decide to outsource to some not too expensive labor who does not have proper architectural knowledge for IT and so on, they might not be able to push your changes without like erasing your user's preference in the database and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I think if it depends. Like AdBadger is a software company, so something like that, and we played around with you know development agencies to build things for us, but really we found the most traction and the most easy cycle of development with our in-house team. So like actually hiring developers is a skill that anyone who wants to start a software company should really understand. How do you manage developers? I think they get managed differently than any other employee. And in fact, like the lessons that you learn through like agile development and Scrum and things like that could really be applied to everybody else. Like really good principles with how to manage tasks, how to manage a project, what a reasonable load looks like. all, how to reflect and run a retrospective. All of those things I learned probably too late into Ad Badger's life cycle. But once they start to connect, it really increased our velocity and increased our code quality and just increased everything. So like from the vision in my head, giving it to our CTO and getting that built really improved that once I really learned how to talk and communicate with developers. Um, so yeah, and especially with what we do, it's so technical. And it's constantly changing. I think it would be difficult for us to outsource any of that. So I'm a big fan of that. If someone wants to start a software company, I personally believe like that should be an in-house skill. Whereas maybe if you are a not a software company and you want to have an internal software, then yeah, maybe something like that could be spec'd out and given to an agency much, much easier.
So you did hire actual full-time developers in-house
That's
in the
right.
States to build that software. Okay, which is
Mhm.
another major expense because it feels like
Time to raise money. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because each time you try to develop anything, you just well, that's 20 hour, that's 100 hour, that's like it just piles up for each of
Mhm.
your features and the debugging and so on.
Yes.
So you're saying to well raise money to be able to fund that and also learn Agile Scrum. There's awesome books about this, and you can go do your Scrum Master
Mhm.
certification. It's not too long to do. So you can learn how to communicate better with programmers. Anything else that you've discovered on how to motivate those programmers and to get excellent work with them?
Yeah, if someone has never hired or managed developers, get a consultant. Like talk to someone who has managed developers. Uh, what really changed the game for us was we hired a temporary engineering manager, who basically their job they worked at larger companies where they just managed engineers, and they really gave us the codex to really understand. So that is a massive shortcut. Pay somebody for a month's worth of consultation to get into shape. Read the professional product owner, uh, just because that's essentially what you are. A lot of times you think about, okay, I want to build software. It's just going to be developers build software, right? And actually, no, it's like you want a front end person, you want a UX UI person, you need a back end person, you need a front end person, you need a project manager, you need an like the amount of product owner who's thinking of features, you need someone to collect user feedback. Building software uh, has so many roles that go beyond just a developer, and understanding that if you just hire a developer that all of those other roles are going to need to fall on you should definitely need to be aware of what an org chart looks like when software gets built. So all of those things that I mentioned need to happen, because what are developers really good at? They're really good at building code and building apps, and doing the things like they're building the widget. But then when you think about all the other components of how a widget gets built, they need a lot of support to really shine. So I'm always asking, what do our team members need in order to do their best work? Um, and I feel like that question doesn't always get asked for developers. So what do developers need to do their best work is a question I thought about a lot.
And it's true. A lot of people believe that developer can sort of do it all, but it's just web development. And no, there's a lot of specific trades in this, like hiring a
Hmm.
plumber thinking you can build a whole house.
Hmm.
There
Hmm.
are a lot of trades and skill set needed to build a whole house. Yes, there are guys who can build a whole house alone. They have all the knowledge for that, but it is still not what to expect when you hire that each person have a specialty, and you need to have the full skill set in your team to have great results. Totally agree with you there. So that engineering manager there probably laid out also the architecture of your software from a technical point of view, so that thing can be scalable. You can roll out updates, and you won't have a problem because the guy just started coding without thinking of the future.
Right. Hmm.
It makes a big difference. Do you have any specific like tools or workflow that you'd like to share about that continuous deployment? Once you have a software, a SaaS software.
Yes. So, really, from my perspective, I think the thing that we follow the most is from the book that you mentioned, The Lean Startup. feature creep is real, and what that means is, when I sit down and I think of a new feature, I think of like how amazing it could be. I think of all the things that just one of, because we have an entire suite of tools. And when I'm thinking of a new tool, I can, you know, think of something that will take a year to develop. And then I sort of think, well, what's better? Like waiting a year for everything and then maybe even being off the mark. Maybe all of these thoughts in my head isn't actually what users want, or maybe the interface would be weird or something like that to be off the mark. So imagine like waiting a year to build something and then being completely off the mark, and then taking 6 more months to fix it. Whereas if you think of that ultimate tool, you can really actually like, what is the core piece of value that we're actually providing people with this tool? And then how do we get just that out in as quick as possible so that it can form the next stage of that tool? So instead of something that will take 12 months, what can we build in 1 month that's going to provide that value in a way that will be impactful and people will like it? And that way we can then bolt onto it next month and the following month and really improve it that way, as opposed to, you know, doing it in private without feedback for 12 months. You can release something smaller, still good, still gets the job done, but you get feedback to inform the next month and the next month. That is something that we followed a lot. And that's something that I really do think about when it comes to our development cycle.
Totally agree with you. That is so true. Go with the phased approach or iterative approach, or have sprints, or whatever
Hmm.
long, how long, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and release the functional software at each time to
Yep.
make it better and
Hmm.
better all the time. Totally agree with that. Okay. Anything else that comes to mind that like people trying to start a software company, a SaaS software company, should think about?
Mm. Yeah. Don't be afraid of feedback. It can be really difficult, but like getting feedback before people cancel is massive. What are we missing? How could we have improved this experience for you? Trying to get feedback as much as possible is massive. And, it's something that you hear a lot with software. And it's kind of like, when you hear it, it's like, yeah, yeah, of course you should be getting feedback. But I feel like with software, it's so pivotal. Um, actually sitting down with people, watching them through your software, um, can help you learn so much. So don't be afraid to really get some of that critical feedback. You know, watch people not know where to click. Like, yeah, that really sucks to hear. And, if somebody's leaving you for a competitor's tool, like, yeah, that really sucks to hear. But anyone who's doing this should really want that journey and like needs to hear that. Um, so you really do become your own software's toughest critic, which is, it's sort of a strange position to be in. But if you're your own software's toughest critic, you always have something new to improve. You always have something new to work on, and that energy is like such an incredible force at improving your tool.
And when you created this new tool, obviously you were already a pay-per-click expert on Amazon Expert. You were passionate about the topic, and then you decided to create that software. Was there any specific like vision or philosophy behind this on how to make all your guiding decision as to what the software should be?
Yeah. So it was really just what are the things that we do manually? And then how do we create something that helps you do it a lot faster? How do we take it from having to log into Amazon, make 5 clicks, download a spreadsheet. Now you're in Excel. Now you need to do 10 more clicks to filter the data that you want. Then you have that data, and then it's another 25 clicks in order to paste it in a format that you can upload back to Amazon. Or, you know, clicking into Amazon, opening up 5 campaigns, digging through them. How do we get it so that all the campaigns are already dug through and then we're presenting you with the most relevant piece of information with some options where you can get something done in a matter of 2 clicks, log in and approve or disapprove some changes, or log in and pause some of your worst keywords, or just make some of those decisions for you on the back end. you know, that's really the guiding philosophy behind Ad Badger. How do we make it so that we only make good decisions? So when a keyword is, you're spending too much on a keyword, we take care of it. When there's not enough spent on a keyword, we take care of it. how do we make only good decisions? When a keyword gets 30 clicks without an order, automatically pause it. Things like that is how we think about our software development for people.
And as a founder now, you've been in this for at least 4 years, more or less. Like, what's your role at this point? Are you still involved in day to day? You work a lot on the software. Are you working more on marketing? How do you spend it?
Oh man, a little bit of everything. Um, some of the things that I still do, I still love the product development cycle, meaning I love thinking of new things to improve our tool. Being a PPC person, I still have so many ideas for that. So just sort of being product owner is one title I have. Another thing that we are looking for is a chief marketing officer. So we don't have one right now. So doing some of the marketing I do. I love podcasting. I love talking about Amazon advertising. So I do that on a weekly basis as well.
All right. Any last thought or anecdote that you'd like to share from your journey of creating the software?
Yeah, I heard some quote before, and it said that every company is a software company, but only a certain percentage of companies know this. So I even think, e-commerce companies that are building products should still know and understand software. So even if they don't build the software themselves, even if they're not building software and selling software, they should still know, what tools are available to help me get the most work done and as most efficiently as possible. So working with teams that develop software, working with software itself, or maybe even developing their own software, um, these are things that I think any company, needs to get really good at understanding what tools are available, how to get more work done more efficiently. Uh, I think those are the keys that every company needs to know.
Awesome. And if people want to get in touch with you, Michael, where can they find you?
Yeah, check us out at adbadger.com. If you are interested in Amazon advertising, you want more info on that. I podcast weekly at the PPC Den podcast. You can search that. Um, and you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Michael Erickson Facchin.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you for being here today.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure.